Good evening and greetings.
What up? What up? What up?
What's going on? So it is official. It is officially a ShadowCast now. So ShadowCast 44. We're punching everybody and defining console generations. You see what's on the screen now. So I needed to do this. It was unrelated, but it was related because I posted a tweet that was kind of punching up at IGN, and of course, and it was just a screenshot. It wasn't a link to the video or anything like that.
Right.
And it's just like, hey, why all of a sudden? Why since the 8th generation do they want to isolate the Sony and Microsoft consoles and leave Nintendo out of the conversation? This is a thing that's been happening for the longest time. And for whatever reason they want to do this, and then I get all the excuses and they just created this podcast, blah blah blah. This isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what has been happening before this, and them saying stuff like HD twins and all the other kind of foolishness. Even though both of those consoles, the majority of those games were not HD. I'm going through old school right now. I'm going through old school right now because my son bought me Dark Souls Remastered for Switch like a year or so ago, right? Whatever, right? So I'm going through to play the original PS3 version of Demon Souls so I can go through, play the old school way, like get all of the jank out of the way before I finish everything, do Dark Souls 2 and 3, and then go and play Dark Souls Remastered again or Demon Souls Remastered again on PS5, right? So I understand the entire process, the journey and the stuff that they added to make the game a little bit easier or better for people or whatever, the quality of life stuff or whatever, right?
Right.
So, which is irony because somebody just said that Nintendo doesn't bring anything to generations other than remakes, and I just mentioned how a game is being remade.
How many times was Last of Us remade?
Last of Us, this will be the third time.
How many times?
On the PS5, and I'm like, I'll just leave that there, and it's amazing to me. And what was the other game? Eco, and then Shadow of the Colossus. Like,
Shadow of the Colossus.
They just remake the remake of the remake, and it's just Final Fantasy. Like, insert version here. They've been remade multiple times from PS3 to PS4 to whatever systems, and like nobody bats an eye when that happens. But the first thing you want to do is say all Nintendo does is rehash them. But that point being said is that console generations have been set for a while, and it was before Microsoft and Sony came around. So I don't know why all of a sudden people think that Sony and Microsoft need to define a generation, and that it only starts when Sony and Microsoft says so. And I'm like, no, that's not a thing. It's never really been a thing.
Actually,
yeah, exactly.
What you need to understand is that Sony and Microsoft actually push the gaming industry.
There
forward.
you go.
And Nintendo does not. See, if you understood that, you would understand that they push the 4K, even though 4K really doesn't even work unless it's 30 frames locked. But we're not worried about that. We are saying that we're going to 8K. You don't understand how good everything's going to be when 32K, 100,085 frames a second is standard. You don't understand that, Shadowfox.
Bruh.
Gosh darn it.
And that's only possible in one game this generation? Yeah,
for the most part.
But let's go ahead and make that the standard, right? First things first. Thank y'all for coming out to the ShadowCast. Who stepped in the fucking game? Yes, we cuss it because of the ShadowCast. Bacardi break, all that shit's happening right now. So everything's random. I started a podcast like way late. I ended the broadcast. I started the broadcast after I already had the video plan. So y'all saw half a video. It's like a ShadowCast should be, completely fucking random and jank. So I mean, it is what it is. I got Sandstorm in the chat. What's up? You know, I mean, Daddy Woes and you know, Hubby Life. You know how it goes, man. That's why I wasn't on the podcast Sunday with Jay. But you know, it is what it is. I mean, you got to do what you got to do. And
I offered chicken wings and chicken tenders. I just want y'all to know that I offered.
So my wife, that she's like, "What kind of party is that?"
Hey, as a divorced individual, certain things just don't work. When the mindset is set. Hey, it's just how it goes, brother.
It is what it is.
And this week is going to be Oreo cookies and cream. This week, we're offering.
She's happy because I just got her the Hello Kitty cards for Animal Crossing, so she's good.
Yeah, she said
that. But she will not let. I'm not allowed to play that game now. She says it's her franchise now. I can't play it. Wow, I'm like, I played the OG on GameCube. She's like, you can't play it. It's my game now. I was like, okay,
wow,
all right, you win. You win, yes, ma'am. So
Smash Bros. Best 3 out of 5. Smash Bros. Best 3 out of 5.
Smash is the only way to settle anything, especially in this house. Jesus. In Smash or Madden, go figure. But and then I got to pick a version because we have every version. So
and you can only play with the Cleveland Browns.
Yes.
Without Barry Sanders.
I don't know if I want to jump straight into the topic because then it's all serious and I got to start talking about history and all that foolishness.
I mean, you really don't have to start talking about history if you want to. You just say like what it actually is. It's your podcast.
Because my thing is like the conversation when you posted this months ago, it seems like it's eons ago. We've been having this conversation.
Yep.
When Pear replied to you, Pear was like trying to go back to what you got listed here with the Magnavox and all the other stuff with the Ataris. And while I understood where he was coming from to where it was kind of shaky and you couldn't really tell, at the same time, it still kind of stands. If you have a system that can still play the newer games, even if you say like, okay, we went to Atari 5200, I would still consider that within the same generation. It's just a mid-generation bump like we did with the Pro and the X. So if I can still play my 26 on the 52 or the 52 can do whatever. I mean, I don't know how they looked at it back then, but when it comes down to current, when we try to sit with Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation, and Xbox, it's clear as day. There's no other reason for you to look at, hate to say it, Wii U as the current gen with the 8th gen and Switch going into the 8th gen, and it's stupid because the Switch can't play Wii U games. It can't happen. Like you can't put a disc.
Take a Wii U disc and put it in the Switch. Oh, you can't. But you can take a PS4 game. You can play old PS4 games on your PS5 straight up.
But the weird part is we've seen this starting back for at least me, because I wasn't really big into the media of gamings back in the day. I had my magazines here and there when I could get them. But when it came down to the 360 for me, that's when I started seeing if it wasn't a graphical upgrade, they didn't consider it a jump to the next generation. So that's all they looked at. They didn't look at any IP changes, any type of, format changes, anything. It was just, if you could take us to the next graphical push, then that's what we consider the next generation. And I think that's the problem.
That being said, right, even that is inaccurate. Why? Because Wii is on this list.
Yep.
Wii is a 480p console. Yep. And the only thing that increased from it was double of the registers for how can I say this? For I guess how can I rephrase this? So the GameCube didn't have pixel shaders, right? It had its own custom color combiner, right? And it had a set number of registers, right? So they improved that again because they had clock increases and all the other kind of stuff for Wii. So they increased the amount of color combiners per pass on the Wii as well. So the graphics increased a little bit with regards to that. So there's a little bit more effects that you could do on Wii versus GameCube. And if it wasn't nothing but for the clock increase, a lot of that stuff was possible. But then, if you knew what you were doing with indirect texturing and stuff like that, there was more you could do with the TEV on Wii than you could on GameCube, because there was more registers for you to play with per frame, if you will. The developers don't develop per frame apparently anymore. They do render targets, and now you have games that are over 120 gigs for that reason. But that leaves us in a pickle, because if Wii classifies as a 7th generation console, how can you say Switch is not a 9th generation console?
Right.
If you're going to use technology as a thing, because we know, hey, with regards to technology, yes, obviously 360 and PlayStation 3 had more as far as CPU SIMD instructions and GPU, well, definitely GPU SIMD instructions. It blows Wii out of the water. Now, if you deal with ratios, 360 and PlayStation 3 did not fulfill what they were designed to do, because they could not fulfill the promises that they had for 720p. They had to do sub HD to fulfill a lot of things that they wanted to do within those games. Whereas Wii is like, we're a GameCube on extra crack. You're going to get 480p games. You're going to get 60 frames per second, because there's nothing else left to do. We already did it on GameCube. So if you know how to make a GameCube game, it'll be way easier to make a Wii game. So,
quick question. Quick question.
Yes.
If it's going by graphical, I guess, leaps and bounds to push generation, wouldn't that mean that the PS5 and the series aren't 9th gen? Because this is a generation of efficiency. It's not a generation of graphical. It's a generation of efficiency.
I want to say the same thing about the 8th generation too, because all the 8th generation did was fulfill the broken promises of the 7th generation.
Yeah, for the 7th gen. So if that's the case, I know people are going to sit there, no, it is a graphical leap. Nah, it ain't. That's why everything can be played on it. If you go back, perfect example, Horizon Forbidden West, about to come out February 18th. It is not a PlayStation 5 exclusive.
No, it's not.
Facts.
In small print, it's available on PS4 as well.
But Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, you cannot take that cartridge and put it in a Wii U.
But it's not the same art style, so it's that's the big picture.
But
no sense to me.
If like I said, if the main train of thought is, okay, it has to it's pushing graphics and all of this, then nothing is 9th gen. Then if that's the case, because the series and the PS5, it's a generation of efficiency. Cerny even told that when everybody thought they was going to pay attention to that, because they thought he was going to drop games, and he was actually just doing a dev presentation. That's pretty much what was said then, and Microsoft pretty much confirmed that by saying the whole time, hey, look, you'll be able to play everything. We ain't gonna lie to y'all and say that this can't be played on your Xbox One S or X. It can.
I mean, they literally gave a Christmas gift. Like, literally, I think just about every OG Xbox game and every 360 game works on the Xbox Series now.
Well, the ones that they can find licenses for.
Yeah. There you go.
With outside of weird stuff like old MGM properties and stuff like that, they can't go. They don't want a lawsuit, obviously. So whatever games they were able to get, like, I think probably a lot of the Tony Hawk games are probably in jeopardy because of that. A lot of the music licensing and stuff like that, and probably the wrestling games too. So
which is why they did the whole Tony Hawk Pro Skater remake thing, good, because Tony was like, shoot, man, I need that. Hey, I need royalties. So
I mean, it's smart. It's smart. I mean, because you think about it, that's what we've always discussed when you talk about what should come back. When we point at Dreamcast, or we point at that entire generation in itself, to where it was just a marketing beast in the sense of, we got Burger King here, we got this here and there. So there's no way for them to bring it back without spending thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on licensing. So that's the biggest issue.
If Sony was smart, they would bring back the Tony Hawk Pro Skater, the one that had Venom and Spider-Man on it.
Man,
they wouldn't have to pay for it, because they wouldn't have to pay for it.
Man,
because Venom and Spider-Man ain't Venom and Spider-Man theirs?
Or OG NBA Jam, because you had Bill Clinton in there, Air Dog, and Shaq, and everybody was in that game. You had everybody in there, so it's like, how do you get That's where you need the lawyers. Basically, that's the only way to get a lot of that backwards compatibility stuff to work. But since you mentioned Dreamcast, that's the weird thing, because
that one
Dreamcast proves that Switch can start a generation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't say, oh, because technology, blah, 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 and all this. I'm like, well, Dreamcast started the 6th generation. Nobody said nothing.
There's people that still kind of in that PS1 64 generation, though. Even though I know it started the whole generation and went in with PS2 and Xbox, but there are people that claim it's with 64 and PS1.
Nah.
Yeah. The Saturn was 5th gen. It was the Saturn. It was Atari, Jaguar, then Saturn. And
I think what happened is because of how fast.
This is pretty accurate. The one that I'm looking at right now. This is pretty accurate.
I think it was because of how fast the Dreamcast came out after the Saturn. That's why people get that confused, because the Saturn should have. If Sega was smart, they would have pulled what Nintendo did with the Wii U. Look, we're not jumping ship early. We're gonna do our full 5.
Yep.
Then we're gonna jump soon as we hit 5. We're going over. But they didn't do that. They got scared for whatever reason. So
if you look at this list here, the only outliers with regards to what the traditional generation length is the first 2 generations. The first 2 generations were literally a decade apiece because of how long. And you're talking about a generation of consoles that started with the oscilloscope. So it's kind of like, you gotta kind of. And so the Magnavox Odyssey was the first one of those kind of consoles where you could say, I could take a cartridge out and put another one in. So now it classifies it as what's called a console system, because they have removable cartridges that play different programs as you put them in. Because otherwise the Pong machine would count, and it kind of doesn't, because you can't do anything other than Pong on that early Atari system. So so you start there, and then you got almost 10 years apiece worth each one of these consoles that launched there. So you got the Odyssey, the Odyssey 2, the Atari 2600, which came in, and Atari 2600 lasted longer than the consoles that attempted to replace it, which is amazing to me. That's like the NES on crack. There's like everybody loves the 2600. It started out wood grain, and people were like, well, buy the 5200, and the 5200 is like a half step. And then they're like, well, buy the 7800, and the 7800 is pretty good. It's almost arcade quality then at the time, but it wasn't. It couldn't play all of the 2600 games, and you couldn't take a 7800 cartridge and put it in 2600 what everybody had. And so then at the time, forward compatibility would have been probably the best concept then at the time, because what you didn't want to do was make an exclusive 7800 game, which a lot of developers did at the time, and they were left in limbo. So as you can see, the 2600 lasted a very long time, like almost until the 90s, and this console launched in the late 70s. So that console generation that's the end of the 2nd gen, and then we start moving on to weird stuff like the NES and whatnot. So NES, 46 years, that's what Nintendo stuck to as far as traditions go. You're talking about 1984 and 1985, and it eventually gets replaced by the Super Nintendo in 1990 in Japan, 1991 in the United States. So that's 4 to 6 years. It still fits within that window. Then the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, they're both replaced, and the N64 replaced in 1995 in Japan, 1996 in the United States, and the Saturn launched in, I believe it was April 1994, if I'm not mistaken, because they wanted to beat out the PlayStation, which came in September of 95. So if I'm not mistaken, the Saturn launched in 94. I don't know if this chart is accurate. No, it says mid 95 for Saturn, but I remember seeing magazines for it in 94 talking about the Saturn. So they were ready to launch that system a long time before it actually launched. It was like it was anywhere between April and May 95. They went ahead and stealth launched the Saturn.
Because the big issue was the simple fact that they didn't tell developers they were dropping early, right?
Yep, they dropped early before people were ready. So the only games that were available then at the time, like in Japan, there was a couple of RPGs that were ready already, and then of course all the AM2 games were ready. So your Virtua Fighter and all that stuff was ready, but nobody else was ready. And then in the United States, nobody was ready. So you had like Clockwork Knight and a couple of other games, I guess, that were available at launch.
Right.
But nobody else was ready. So you talking about like any of the EA games? I don't even think I think they still skipped Sega at that point because they weren't ready to do anything for the Saturn. Then at that point, fighting games, all that stuff was missing. So you just had Virtua Fighter from Sega at launch, and that was pretty much it. So until Virtua Fighter 2, you didn't really have anything. Then after Virtua Fighter 2, then all the Capcom fighters start coming.
Right.
So Virtua
4 that's when Street Fighter vs. X-Men hit, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think it required, I don't know if it required a cartridge then at the time. I think one of them required the 8 megabyte cartridge
I remember that.
Because if not, you had to wait to load to be able to switch characters back and forth. It was one of those it was bad. And on the PlayStation it was super bad. Like you just had one character the entire round for the PlayStation version of
that's why everybody was going to the arcade to play it. That's why everybody was going to the arcade to play it. They was like, I'm just not putting up with it.
Yeah, the CD-ROM couldn't load fast enough, and games are held in RAM, and there wasn't that much RAM in the PlayStation and the Saturn then at the time, so you couldn't really actively switch back and forth then.
Right.
Which is crazy because the N64 had a solution to that, because if you played Mortal Kombat Trilogy on that system, you could do tag matches and there was no lag.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those weird situation, but Capcom wasn't ready to support the N64 then at the time until Angel Studios started doing Magic. But the fifth generation had the most competition by far, because there's other stuff that's not listed on here.
Right.
Go ahead, Jay.
So you're telling me that flipping over my PlayStation 1 was not going to fix that?
I think everybody did that at the time, and that was just the latch not working. But I was able to play a lot of games with the lid open. I would just
me too.
I would just paper clip the little pin on the inside, so it would think that it was still closed, and I would be able to play games with the lid open. Because that little lid was just the worst, man. My PS1 is still that poor guy. I put it through so much. I think I've opened it like 7 times. It's been through so much drama. But no, hey, that was, you know what though? I am still hurting for that system, because to me that's the heart of PlayStation, because they spent all that money on Takara games. They spent all that money on Naughty Dog and all those franchises, man. There are so many franchises that are locked to that system that are never coming back, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy to me how Sony had a huge catalog of games and they just said, no, we don't want to deal with it anymore. We don't want to. We've got Sony Santa Monica, and that's all we need. And I'm like,
now they wish they had half of them back.
Well, I mean, it kind of looks like, and I don't know if this was ever their approach, but it seems like Sony is not keen on holding on to franchises. They always seem like they want to make the next big thing. So even when you look at now to where the Activision acquisition from Microsoft, it didn't even dawn on me that Spyro and Crash. So that started with PlayStation. Now it's over here with Xbox.
Yes. So now it might fuck around and be exclusive for real. Yes. And it's so crazy. I just got through tweeting about that, like saying, like, for real, like they were asking who the PlayStation mascot was, and I'm looking at all these unknowns. I mean, I hate to say unknowns, but
right now it's Kratos.
I would say Astrobot. I would give it Astro.
I don't want to.
At this point in time, I would say it's Kratos.
I do not want to assign Kratos. I do not want to assign Astrobot. To be honest with you, if we're going to take a third-party person and add them in there and say that they're the PlayStation franchise at this point, and it's not Crash, I would say Lara Croft, to be honest with you, because Sony took a lot of the advertising for the PS1 version for whatever reason. Like they basically tried to override the PC advertisement, because Core Entertainment then at the time, they wanted to take everything away from Crystal Dynamics and say, hey, we're going to do all the publishing for the Tomb Raider games or whatever, and we're going to plaster all the magazines and whatnot. And Sony's like, we got one hot ad and we got one hot commercial, and everybody flocked to the PlayStation version. So it's like
they dropped it though. Like that's the way I look at it. Like they dropped Laura.
They did drop lore,
and I think they dropped lore in Switch of Drake for Uncharted because around the PS3, Tomb Raider games were awful. Like they ran bad. So I mean, when I look at a mascot, I mean, we all know Microsoft and Nintendo's, but when it comes down to Sony, while I love Kratos, when you talk about a mascot, I'm thinking of like a marketing appeal. I'm thinking Crash, I'm thinking all those, but the ones that they have, I would say Astro's easier to do, but it seems like they keep trying to go to a Sackboy for some reason too.
Like I wanted to say even like Hooper during the time, but it's like you can't
Slide
even really
or Jack. Slide or Jack.
You can't really do that. Sprite, I see you. He threw one out there. He said, "Remember 989 Studios?" Yes, all the sports games are yes.
Vicarious Visions,
legends. Legends
gone.
So I don't know how this generation is like 5th gen was to me, to be honest with you, that was when gamers ate because you had
baby.
Man, I don't know because it was way more competition during 5th because you had weird shit out there like CDI, like you had 3DO, like the 3DO version, the 3D version of 3DO version of Super Turbo is by far one of the best versions, one of the best home conversions of that game that I played on any platform, and I refuse to play anything else on 3DO other than I don't know, maybe Dateless Encounter, but that's a whole nother scenario. Tia Carrere is an individual. But
see,
that's that system in particular was weird because it only had 5 buttons, man. Yeah. So you're playing Street Fighter with 5 buttons. It was a whole nother thing. It was just weird. Jaguar with a calculator, like literal calculator. But
I didn't get a chance to experience any of that because at that time I was, young enough to where I still had to depend on my grandparents to purchase that stuff. And when I tell you against video games, them, like it was a sin. So me having something like a PlayStation, I was lucky I had an uncle that played video games. So whenever he came home on leave from his duty station, he would come like a duffel bag full of games. Just like that's the first time I heard about the PlayStation. When he was like, "Have you heard of PlayStation?" I'm thinking it's like an arcade based off the pictures. I'm saying he's like, "No, it's an actual console in your house that displays these graphics that you saw at an arcade machine." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's pretty dope." Yep. So but I look at things now to where I enjoy the 6th gen. I feel like there was a lot more variety in 5th with consoles in competition, like you said. But honestly, I look at things now to where I feel like it can be a mix between the developers being the death of generations, or do you think generations will be the death of developers? Because as we go along, we're losing developers, but it seems like the main consensus is the developers say they don't have enough power to do it, so they keep pushing the needle a little too fast, I feel.
7th gen killed all the B studios.
Well,
for sure.
Can I be... I'm just going to say it. Like, look, when Microsoft came in, that's when stuff hit the fan. When they came in, because their business practices being what they are, it was like, oh, y'all just give us how much to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so Sony, Nintendo, Sega, y'all ain't giving us nothing. Oh, we actually got to make sure the game work. Yeah, I'm gonna go over here. So, I mean, that's what happened. Not to say that Microsoft is evil, because I'm not gonna say that.
They're a business,
kinda. But
we needed them because Sega was dead, and they spent a lot of money on Sega games early on for the original Xbox.
And to be fair, they did try to buy Nintendo.
They tried.
They tried to buy Nintendo, and Nintendo laughed at them.
Oh, that's so funny. But yeah, I understand, but I think that mixed with the HD generation, the 7th generation, killed it because once again, Iwata told everybody, we didn't max out the 6th gen. We don't need to go up to HD. There was no reason, and people laughed at him. But guess what? He's been proven to be right because all these companies, they gone.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, you think about it, GameCube in a way stayed around with the Wii, kind of like what Shadow was saying. It was just they gave you a different way to play it.
Pretty much.
I mean, I like that idea of if you're talking about pushing forward, if we're talking generations, for me, you gotta one, of course, even if it's the same format, I'm fine. I'm looking for a different way to play. That's why I still like the Wii U is still my favorite console. Even though it didn't perform well, I still think that's my favorite console. Like even over the Switch,
they went above and beyond.
Yeah,
they went above and beyond.
They did everything.
They didn't have to put half the features that was in that console.
No, they didn't.
They didn't. And which is funny because they were like, okay, y'all didn't want to buy that. We'll take everything out and just give y'all the chance to just take it anywhere. Because that's what y'all said y'all wanted.
Look at all the things. Look at all the things that people complain about now on Switch. There's no folders. There's no virtual console
on Wii U.
There's no integrated social media thing for messaging and whatnot.
Wii U.
That's all on Wii U. There's no external storage directly supported. Like you can't just take a hard drive and plug it up to it.
Wii U. That got laughed at though.
They were like, "Oh, well, you hook an external block." I'm like, "Come on, bro, you're gonna be doing that with the Xbox One and PS4." And they're like, "No, we're not. We got plenty of storage."
What you're doing now?
Exactly what they end up doing.
Literally, what you're doing right now.
I mean, yeah. So you're mad at your PS5 because you went and got downloaded all the Call of Duty, not knowing it was 286 gigs.
And the sad part was, Nintendo still ended up doing it right because you still didn't need them. You still didn't need to install a game to run it. No. You could still run the game directly from the disc, and if you wanted to have indie games or you wanted to download the game or whatever, you could have them all on an external drive and still run those that way, or copy them to the flash and run them that way. You had your option of how you wanted to run games, and it wasn't a requirement for you to install every game. It became a requirement for it.
Now.
You gonna tell me you only got a 500 gig drive at launch? Man, get the fuck out of here. Well, I can just take a 25 gig, Blu-ray or whatever, and run it straight off the Blu-ray on Wii U, and I never have to worry about storage. Why is 32 gigs even a problem? If I can add my own storage to it at any point in time for way cheaper than a drive for either one of those platforms, or I don't even need it because I don't have to install a game. And
you can do it two ways. You had a flash drive,
every excuse,
and an external hard drive. So you could actually have up to, I think it was up to 2 terabytes.
Yeah.
I think on the Wii U.
Yeah, and even that can be tricked. It's really just the partition table. So if you trick the partition table, you can add whatever you want. So, I believe I have a 6 terabyte drive hooked up to the Wii U right now. It probably still only sees it as 2, but it'll just keep on adding until whatever.
Right.
It might eventually corrupt, but I don't care. It's whatever.
Yeah. That's why I said it still hasn't been beat as far as I'm concerned. Because even with these consoles now, I mean, I love my Switch. The Xbox Series X for me is still my favorite this generation so far. And now game wise, it's going to be Nintendo. But as far as what a console offers you, this is my Series X hand down.
The Series X is it's spoiling because you open the console and there's a giant barcode. You scan the barcode, it takes you to Microsoft site. If you already have a live account, it signs you in. Easy. It signs you in. It says, "Hey, you have an Xbox One. Guess what? Your Xbox One is dead now. Everything on it has been transferred to the Series X. Throw that in the trash." And then every game you have is there. And then you start playing, and you're like, "I don't want to play this game anymore." You go to the home button, and it's like, "You want to play another game?" You play the other game, and it's like, "I don't need to load anything. I'm going to go directly into the next game." And the other game is still in the background. You're like, "I want to go back and finish playing the other fighting game." You go back and you're right back to where you were. So I'm like, that's great. That's wonderful. I've done it up to 5 games at a time.
I've had 8.
They weren't. I'm about to say they weren't all current gen games, but I've had up to 5 at a time, going back and forth, back and forth between each one, and that's great. I love that. I love that as a feature. PS5 not so much because it's not as stable. So
right.
Depending on what you're playing, you can do system resume, you can do suspend, and then jump back in. It definitely works better than it did for PS4 and Xbox One.
Right.
Because, depending on what game you're playing, you turn the game back on and you try to jump right back in. It's like,
good luck.
Nope. Good luck. You're playing Tomb Raider, you're falling through the floor. What happened? If the game even boots back up, I got blue screen on a lot of them. So,
especially those online games, because with Riders Republic, 2K, those games to where you have to be connected to online. As soon as you go in there, it's like, nope, you got to go right back to the main menu because
you right back out.
You got kicked out.
But I thought we were only supposed to play new games. You're not supposed to want backward compatibility.
Yeah. If I've learned anything the entirety of me gaming, everybody says what they don't want, and then let's say a generation or two later, they're asking for it again.
It's the next generation.
It's the next generation because I just don't understand it. That's why I try to like slowly move myself out, but it's just it's so nauseating. But generations in itself, I'm just mad that this conversation is still being had. That like there's no reason for you to have to do this, the ShadowCast. I'm like,
it's just a thing, man. I kind of knew I was going to do this podcast on generations anyway because I needed to get it done and get it out of the way, right? Like people need to understand what the fuck is actually happening and what they're defined by time. They're not defined by specifications. They're just a grouping of consoles that launched around the same period of time. And when one console says, okay, I'm done, we're going to start another one, they're not starting in the same generation. They're starting another generation. Yes. So everybody else, once they start theirs, they join that same generation of the other person that started over. So it's like, I don't know why people magically think that's not a thing. I'm sitting here looking at Dreamcast all over again. Look at Dreamcast. Look at Dreamcast. It started the generation. So
do you think it was because like 7th gen went so long? Because remember, 7th gen went like
that's what it was. That's what it was. And it became the new standard. So they're like, hey, well, for us, we got 7th gen here. We got 360 and PS3 that got stretched out because they tried to do Wii and, to varying degrees of success or whatever to extend the generation. And then you have you got the PS4, Xbox One generation where they're like, we try to extend it by, I don't know, upgrading the existing console by overclocking them or some shit. Right. And they're like, well, we got our generation extended another 6 to 7 years by doing that. And Wii U died in the middle of it. So they're like, well, if Wii U died in the middle of it, that means that it's still age-in. I'm like, but it still went 4 to 6 years.
Yeah.
And
which is what they're supposed to do.
Nintendo called Switch next generation. So sounds like it's a new generation of shit. And so Switch launches in 2017 and it breaks people's fucking brains. And they're like, oh, well, Wikipedia is like, we got 9th generation of consoles and we got Switch on here. And then after a couple of weeks, they delete not only the Switch category as a console, they deleted the 9th generation of consoles as a category. And this is verifiable. You can go back on Wayback Machine on Wikipedia for consoles and you can see this. And they had internal strife on Wikipedia on how to classify Switch. And there's people in there arguing back and forth because they wanted it to be about technology.
Yep. That's the
over
problem.
And over again. They're like, well, we don't see a bump, so it can't be a console generation. I'm like, bro,
is there a bump now?
Is there a bump now? Architecture and product.
If we want to talk about tech, if tech is to be the bump, Switch would still classify as next gen because who ushered in HD Rumble that now is on PS5 that everybody loves? Nintendo.
What's the bump now though?
Exactly.
What's the bump?
Wording
is efficiency.
They can do marketing.
They can do 4K now. They can do 4K and ray tracing. And I'm like, so
they can do that.
So you bend shaders on your console. So now you can do less. You can do less processing on your graphics core now because you dedicated some of those shaders to do ray tracing. Right. Okay. So you're telling me that any console can't do that? I mean, at this point, I could say shaders on Wii U could do that if we write them custom. We can write them custom and just say, hey, 2 of these shaders on Wii U are going to be dedicated RT cores now. That's what we're going to do. And now ray tracing is possible on Wii U, just like tessellation was. At one point in time, they talked about tessellation during the beginning of age generation, and that quickly faded away. Nobody talked about that anymore. Right. As soon as they were like, well, everything Radeon and beyond, Radeon 2600 and beyond could do tessellation, and then it became a whole thing where we can't include Nintendo. So we got to come up with something. Then they came up with the dumbest shit ever. They were like, well, this is one thing that we don't think Wii U is doing that we can do, because they already tried to say, hey, look, we're going to have phone apps and all that, so we have our own second screen experiences. Mm-hmm. They're going to say these consoles can stream. So you could upload directly to Twitch from your console while you're playing. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, like, that's the dumbest thing ever, because the first thing I'm gonna want to do is I want a high quality stream, which means I'm already gonna have a capture card anyway.
Exactly.
Why do I want? Oh, but you can capture on your console. Why do I want to? I mean, that's cool.
And the highest it could go with 720. The highest it could go with 720.
And what ended up happening is you have like a custom core on every console, to include Switch right now, that sends your capture to the cloud anyway. So all the processing is really done off of the system, and then it's sent to whatever social media account you want to send it to. And we ended up finding out that streaming from an Xbox One or streaming from a PlayStation 4 is absolutely a horrible scenario. That's a horrible way to run a stream. And they really tried to market this. They tried to do it, and they tried to say, hey, look, well, this is going to be the next generation thing. You can stream from your console. It was, I actually think it was on the original Wikipedia page too. They probably edited that, but I think that was part of what they were trying to say eighth generation meant, was that you could do you could stream from your console, and that was the worst thing. But that's just they create these tip-hole little events to just try to say, hey, look, we have this bullet point that whatever the previous generation did not have, or what our competitor does not have, and they go back and forth or whatever. It's kind of frustrating, and it's frustrating to me because the main people that talk about Nintendo having gimmicks will not acknowledge that, hey, the buzzwords and everything that you're looking for pushing gaming forward are buzzwords.
But gimmicks in itself has become a bad word when, in essence, it's anything that's out of the norm is a gimmick. That's just what it is. It's to try to get you to appeal to you to come in and buy the product. That is what a gimmick is. Nice. And gimmick has been dubbed as this weird, quirky thing that nobody wants, or a way to try to weasel you out your money, which is kind of stupid. But I don't know. Like, when we look at these generations, everybody has their gimmick. Xbox went the route of the most powerful console plus resume play, or PS5. They had the design. They try to say, the games can only be ran on PS5s, which we saw that was a lie. And then also they had the next generation controller. The controller's cool. Yeah, but I don't know about anybody else, but I've turned all those features off, because that
haptic feedback is next generation. Now haptic feedback is next generation.
But what was HD Rumble then?
Exactly. We ignore that. I mean, like, literally in that thread, it was ignored, and I'm like, I don't know about you, bro.
But what about the battery life? Does the PS5 controller have the next gen battery life?
Next gen as in still dying? Yeah, I mean, that has to be the worst battery. And I'm like, how in the world did you go
backward from the PS3?
Like, you went how do you go backwards from PS3 and then go to PS4 and then continue it?
Because PS3 battery, that PS3 battery would last 80 hours.
Yes.
How the hell?
I don't get it. Like, because even the PS3, because wasn't that the one they were trying to do away with Rumble, and then they had to come back and put it back in there?
Yeah, because they were just doing motion. So like the 6-axis didn't have Rumble at first.
Yeah, 6-axis,
which that didn't work all that well either. But it's one of those things to where we all know what it is. Nintendo is not going to play the graphics war with you. Yeah. Even if they did. Even if they did, you still wouldn't like it. Because at the end of the day, from the consumer standpoint, that right there will kind of make you feel some type of way. From a developer standpoint, we all know Nintendo's not throwing money at nobody. So if we spoke about this before, if Call of Duty was to ever show its face in full form on Switch, it'd be a wrap.
Yep.
It would be a wrap. But you can't do that because, I mean, granted, the acquisition right now, but nonetheless, you can't really do it because PlayStation and Microsoft throws money at those big companies. And that's
at this point, these are the three things that are critical: Madden,
yep,
a mainline Grand Theft Auto game other than the remakes that just launched, and what you just mentioned. If Call of Duty's there, if Grand Theft Auto's there, a mainline Grand Theft Auto's there, and Madden's there, it's a wrap. And they know this. That's why it's not there.
Right.
So, and it's just strange to me because other games have gone there that normally aren't on Nintendo consoles, and they're selling better than they are on PS4, which has over 100 million consoles out there. And I'm like, Switch at the time only had like maybe 60 million or whatever. And they're like, yeah, our version is going to outsell their version, and that's just bewildering to me, because you typically have to pay the Nintendo tax because it's a cartridge, so you pay a little bit more. It's not as cheap as it is for the PlayStation 4. With all you have to do is wait 2 months, and now it's $20. I mean that's
happening now.
These are just facts. Like, you know, if you want a PS4 version of any game, just wait a couple months, and it's going to be cheap.
That first sale gonna happen.
Oh yeah.
So it's just odd, and that's just the weird thing to me is like Nintendo breaks people's brains with regard to technology. We're mentioning earlier where you're talking about. You said the motion controls or whatever, and have the feedbacks or whatever. That's the technology that makes it next generation. Even if you just want to go just by specs, the Sony and Microsoft were waiting to get out of Jaguar. They were trying to wait to the last minute to not have Jaguar. They did not want those CPUs for those consoles. They wanted something a little bit better that can run just as cool as Jaguar then at the time, even though they overclocked them and made them really hot. They were waiting on what ended up being in Switch, the A57 and the A53. And the A57 and the A53 smoke like per core. Like, obviously the Switch is downclocked or whatnot. So what's inside the PlayStation 4 and the base Xbox One, since they're clocked higher, they're going to give you more, how can I say this, SIMD instructions overall anyway. But if it's higher clock, but if you count per core, per clock, clearly the processor inside of Switch is better. And they don't want to talk about that, but when you have like an Xbox One game ported to Switch and they're just like, let's get rid of all this jank and run it on one core, and it happens, like bro, it was always possible, and they don't want to acknowledge that kind of stuff because the first thing they think about is graphics. They don't think about CPU processing and RAM and how much better and faster per pin memory is now, even in the mobile era. They don't want to count that because they're like, oh, well, it's just a tablet. And I'm like, the SoCs inside of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are tablet as well, right?
Like, they're not educated on it unless somebody.
Those aren't server CPUs, bro. Right. They're not desktop CPUs either.
But that's the conversation I had with people too when we get into the whole like mobile speak as well. Because if you look at Apple's the only manufacturer right now that's still sitting at 12 megapixels on their cameras, but everybody loves their cameras because they're efficient. They've been able to squeeze as much as they possibly could out of 12 megapixels. But you see everybody's at 108.
Their picture software is built around it too. That's
exactly.
Look, one thing you don't understand if you ever get into tech, efficiency beats everything. Efficiency beats everything. And there is one thing I do want to add, and I'm still going to bring this up on the podcast on Sunday, but do not think for 1 second that Microsoft will not put games from Activision and Blizzard on every console if them things ain't selling. And to the people that say, well, look at Starfield, let me tell you something. One name, Minecraft.
Yeah.
Starfield is not established.
Minecraft is on Wii U.
Yeah, Minecraft is ridiculous. And guess what happened? Not only do you get Minecraft on everything, you got Minecraft Dungeons as well.
Yep.
Ori and the Blind Forest. That one's supposed to go nowhere. Yep. But guess what?
Yep.
That base does not like it.
Yep.
It don't sell like that. Guess what Microsoft did? Hey, look, you just gonna have to.
You're not stupid.
We put it on everything.
They're not stupid.
And my favorite new anime, Cuphead. Watch the trailer available now on Netflix. But that is on everything because that base. That's what I'm saying. Like, dude, Microsoft understands one important thing. They like money.
Of course,
they like money. So they're gonna be like, look, okay, Phil gonna be looking like, okay, look, Call of Duty ain't make these numbers that we wanted to make. Throw that thing on the Switch,
right?
But we can't make it work. Throw that thing on the Switch.
And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if for you to play it on the Switch, they require you to have a live account. Yeah, it would not surprise me. And they're like, I need you to sign in the Game Pass, bro.
Which don't
you
take
sign
long.
in. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. And sounds kind of gross,
but I don't think anybody be mad because most people are 2 console owners at least.
Mm-hmm.
So at the very least, and if you talk to most people in the gaming community, I think a lot of people be like, yeah, I got a Nintendo and PC or a Nintendo and PS5 or Sony and a Nintendo, and so it won't be a problem for them to be like, yeah, I can just log into my Game Pass. I already got it.
Yep.
Now crossplay would be nice, but you know, it just all depends.
Yeah, well, Phil is actually advocating for crossplay on everything online and crossplay bans. Get them, Phil.
Yeah, because I love it. Crossplay, and then also, what is it called? I think it's.
Remember Shadow Fox? Remember when we was playing Call of Duty Blackouts on Wii U? We were like, if anybody ever run this with us with these daggone Wii remotes,
they're not ready with the Wii remotes, man. They're not ready. And I had just played a whole bunch of Conduit too, like the night before. Like, bro, they don't want it. They don't want this.
So mentioning that though, so we know how buddy Microsoft and Nintendo are. Does that finally mean we're possibly going to see Call of Duty on Nintendo?
I think it's more likely now, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm gonna tell you right now, as soon as that deal go through, somebody named Bobby and somebody named Kotick gonna be out of the job.
Oh, he gonna be gone. That's the easiest way to get rid of Bobby Kotick at that point.
Yeah,
easiest.
So now he can finally join Dietrich in his Ferrari, and they can go back to wherever the hell they're from. So they can go from there.
This will be big. It'll be big. I think this acquisition works a lot better, even though you see all the headlines. They're ruining gaming. Dude, no, they even pay attention to what they're doing.
Well, they bought Bethesda. No, they didn't. They bought ZeniMax.
Exactly.
Microsoft bought ZeniMax.
Those are pony tears. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm. Look, man. All I know is one of them execs on Activision board called up Microsoft. Hey, look, we got to get this mug out of here, man.
Right.
We got to get this mug out of here, and we ain't trying to pay him all this damn money. So
yeah.
So I wanted to say James Gleason mentioned something in the chat just now. He said isn't Atari Jaguar 4th generation. I'm saying no, and the reason why I'm saying no is because Atari completely opted out of the 4th generation altogether. They were not there at all during the Super Nintendo Genesis. It was literally just Sega and Nintendo at that time, other than NEC. NEC had the Turbo Graphics then at the time. And the only other console that can be considered 4th and 5th generation at the time was one weird hybrid, and that was the AVS system. So so when you start having your SNK systems and whatnot, that was the quote unquote 24-bit, which was really an 8-bit and a 64-bit processor melded together, which is and it's crazy because Atari ended up doing that for the Jaguar because it was two 32-bit processors. It was not one 64-bit core like the N64. So that was their attempt at 5th generation, and obviously that was CD-based games. So there was a Jaguar CD and all that. Nintendo was the only console to not have a CD-based system in the United States because the bulky drive made it here, but only for development purposes. And I think there's only like 3 of those that still exist from the United States, and they're very expensive right now because they were development units that never made it here. There's a bunch of them in Japan. You could probably order whatever. Then at the time, N64DD with the
I really want to try that.
Sold it, didn't they? They actually sold it, right?
Yeah, they sold it, and they sold RANnet too as a subscription. Yep. So you could download the basically the sequel to the Satellaview games and whatnot, and you could play the custom tracks for F-Zero X and all that stuff.
Bro, you can be amazed with some of the stuff that they did because like even Sega was doing online stuff back then too. That was
all the cool stuff.
All the cool stuff. See, there's one system that you're missing from the 5th gen that's actually the best system. The Apple Pippin is missing.
Yeah. That good old Pippin
missing.
Man, I played that Pippin and I played the Sega Pico then at the time. Like
I don't see the most expensive one on here though. Where's the Neogeo?
Neogeo?
the Neogeo.
Bro, I wanted a Neogeo so bad as a kid, bro.
Until you saw their price. Until your parents saw their price tag.
My grandparents was like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like,
"Oh, my bad." The Neogeo Silver and Gold, they're the weird in between. So they're the 24-bit system that's in between 4th and 5th generation. So right at the tail end, or I want to say in the middle of the Super Nintendo Genesis generation, that's when they started coming out, and they're like, "Hey, we're arcade quality, and we're a little bit better than this other stuff over here." And it's like $800 for the low end unit, and you're like, "Bro, I can't even." but I had to do it because it came with fight sticks. Like you just it's the arcade fight, and I'm like, I gotta do it. So the Neogeo Silver, I bought that one.
That's the one thing I hate that I missed because of pricing was Neogeo.
Yeah. I mean, at the time, it was quality. At the time, I was a broke college student, so there wasn't no way in hell I was getting that. So
man, it's good quality then at the time, man. I cut many yards to afford this, but it was great at the time.
The summer of sweat.
I had Magician Lord, and I definitely had some Fatal Fury, and Art of Fighting. So that's good stuff, man. And then you play the Super Nintendo version next to it, and you're like, it's really cool that the graphics still scale on Super Nintendo, but it's so much muddier by comparison. You're just like, this is not even the same game anymore.
That was the one thing I looked at with some of these videos, because you have some content creators that do these comparisons, especially like if you look at a specific game. I think the one I was watching was NBA Jam. And you look at the color, you look at the dimensions, you listen to the audio, like that's where you could tell the differences within those games. And that's what I really like, because I still to this day, even though we got sound systems and all this stuff, I still have like that nostalgia in my brain for like arcade speakers. Whenever you would go and just hear, like even when I heard Mortal Kombat 3 for the first time in the arcades, it just seemed like it was just clear and it was clarity. And I feel like it still can't be beat.
The DCS sound system, and that was what Midway used, and for Mortal Kombat and Killer Instinct, and then you had and Cruising USA, and then you had the Capcom sound system, which is Q Audio or Q Sound, I believe is what it was called then at the time, and I think it was CPU bound, but it still sounded really good. And it's just like a weird kind of stereo synth kind of mix or whatever. Yeah, we got about 27 people watching. Great. Okay, I appreciate it. And like it's a good amount of comments here in the chat here. Somebody said give Bobby his pink slip. Yeah, he's out the door. Bro, as soon as this deal is done, he gone. You know what's about to happen. Yeah, so he gonna knock on Bobby Kotick's door like, hey Bobby. You gotta go. He's gonna say it in a nice way possible because he's the Xbox CEO.
Bro, I'll be like this. I'll be like, I'll come in with the actual Surface with Beverly Hills Cop 1 on it, and the part where Eddie Murphy get thrown out. I'm like, you got 20 minutes of this gonna happen to you.
You gotta go, bro. You gotta go. So
you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here.
Right.
If you look at these previous generations, though, like there should be zero confusion as to what happens. Like if you look at this tail end out here, if you look at this little tail end here, you have right here, you got PlayStation 4 Pro, Xbox One X, I think came out the following year, so that's probably why it's not on this list. Yeah. So you got PlayStation 4 Pro, and then you got Switch right after that. So Switch launched in March. I think the Xbox One X came out in October of that year. So I think that's why it's not listed here.
No. Switch was 2017. Wasn't 2017, Xbox One X the 2016?
I think that was PS4 Pro. That was
PS4 Pro.
But yeah, the One X and the One X and the Switch came out at the same time. Well, same year.
Same year. Okay. Yeah. So Xbox One X, I think, came out in October or November of that year.
Well, the messed up thing about this is because like Microsoft went back and renamed it the Xbox Family. They don't even call it.
Yep. They don't even call it anymore.
Yeah. So that's the weird thing about this. But it's kind of hard because Shadow. We used to always say this. They weren't going to leave Nintendo alone.
Nope.
Not for no year.
They weren't going to do it.
No.
And it already had been too long. They're just like, hey, it's 2017. We gotta release something. Like Sony already had their thing for 2016. Nintendo has their system out, and PlayStation 4 Pro wasn't exactly competing with it. So Switch took off, and they're like, holy fuck. So Xbox One X came out like, hey, we got 4K game, and then people are like, yeah, kind of, depending on the game, and some of it's checkerboarding, and
it's like a 30 frames a second, so you might want to keep that 1080.
Yep. And then people are just like, I could buy a Switch, and I press the power button, and the screen turns off, and I press the power button, and I go right back in the game. So people are like all over this, and they're buying.
Parents were loving it because
full price cartridges because you don't have to install the game. You just hand a cartridge to somebody and you play. Like it's just one of those things.
It comes with 2 controllers, even though it looks like one.
Yeah,
there you go.
But it's interesting though, because if you look at the 8th, which I knew this at the time, but just looking at this chart, Nintendo kicked off the 8th gen too.
Yep.
So now I know at that time people were kind of pissy because the Wii U didn't give that graphical push that they were looking for. So whenever you saw it, it's like, oh, okay, it's not what I wanted it to be. So therefore, they kind of imposed what their thoughts were for the next generation. And PlayStation 4 and Xbox didn't present it either. But it's just like that's what
I poo-poo that too, because I'm like, the whole goal was you wanted high definition, right? Wii U didn't really give you anything below 720p.
But it didn't do that realistic nonsense that people be looking for, though.
And that depends on third-party developers then at that point. Because is Nintendo going to do that? Like, their only realistic-looking game was Eternal Darkness then at the time, and even it was kind of cartoon.
I mean, you can kind of say Metroid Prime was kind of ish.
Yeah, but it never had a Wii U game, so.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I would say this, the thing about the whole Wii U situation was that was the thing that gave the features.
Yeah.
Again, efficiency and features. But, and this goes without saying, Nintendo screwed that up because they didn't explain it. And the gaming media decided that they was going to pounce on it because they wanted Nintendo to go third party. Yep. And how you going to try to push a narrative for a company that has $10 billion in cash at the time to go third party?
And so I hated that too because I saw a lot of the blatant lies. And we talk about this during the phase
from people who already had access to the system and the year before was praising it.
How you gonna tell me as a member of gaming press who has seen the console before I have? How are you going to tell me that you're from IGN, you're from GameSpot, you're from G4 Tech TV or what have you, and then you don't know what the console is for? You don't know if it's an upgrade to the Wii or not. Why would you perpetuate that bullshit when the first time I went to go see the console before the console launched, that's all they told me till I was blue in the face?
Yeah.
And then after I went to that event, I still go and I watch you motherfuckers go on streams and then say you don't know what the console is. You don't know if it's like you're repeating the shit all over again as if you learned nothing after seeing the events that I've been to myself. So you go to E3 not once but twice to see this console, and you don't know if it's an upgrade for the Wii or not. And then I go to one event right after E3 of that year, and the first thing they tell you, time you go, hey, this is a new console from Nintendo. Hey, this is a little black box right here in the corner over here. It does HD. And also you have this gamepad right here. You can look on the screen over here or look all over and whatever, blah, blah, blah. All the games you want to play, Batman, all that other kind of stuff, all third-party games coming. Go.
Right.
Like, you don't need a HUD. Like, you can play Madden without having everything all over the screen. Those are the things that they were telling you. And you're going to tell me they didn't say that at E3? Get the fuck out.
Yeah, they did, because I went back and watched the presentation. But the one key thing I tell people is, like, when you look at retail or you look at now what I feel like the YouTube genre is kind of taking over retail in a way when it comes down to explanations. Yes, the business is going to do their best, and we all agree Nintendo didn't do their best.
They didn't. Yeah.
No, they
didn't.
But
at the same time, if I have a product in my store, especially a new console, my employees are going to get trained up. And then in turn, they can kind of express that to those that don't get into the media like that want to come in and see the next best thing for their grandchild, for their child, whatever. I've walked into stores when the Wii U came out, and the employees couldn't explain it at all. So they just pushed it to the back. Like
almost like it was
all the way in the back.
Yeah. GameStop was notorious for that.
Yeah.
But I would say this, like, it didn't help that you had EA. Ubisoft didn't do it, but EA, Activision, WB, 2011, they all was on stage praising it. 2012.
Well, they had to because Wii was a hit, and they didn't want it to be a hit either, but it became a hit, and they were forced to make games for it.
Well, EA, I still go back to that rumor about the whole EA situation
with the origin.
Yeah. Oh no, that's true. That's true. So they wanted
I was sitting there like, okay, wait a minute. The year before, y'all played it, had it, because EA had dev kits. They can't lie and say they didn't in 2011. So how come in 2012 now everybody hated? I'm like, that didn't make any sense. And then once again with the IGN situation, when they pretended like they didn't know, when Adam Sessler pretended like he didn't know. And then go over the game trailers, Jeff Keighley acting a fool, and Michael Packner started his complete descendancy into BS. I'm like, okay, this sounds like this is a coordinated hit.
Yeah. They were trying to force them to be third party, and I'm like, I don't. They're not going to do it, right? They're not Sega.
And the sad thing about it was they was talking about going third party. The Wii U comes out in November. They were talking about them going third party in February of the next year. I'm like, wait a minute, this console ain't even been out a year.
Fire Owada, all that shit, and then Owada dies like a couple years later, and they're all on his job.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Because one of the things was Phil Spencer kept repeating Iwata quotes.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, he's still doing it now.
Yeah, he's still doing it now.
But people just praising it. Oh, he's a savant. I'm like, dude, he's just repeating what Iwata said. The guy that y'all hated? He said that first.
The guy y'all ignored when he said that stuff.
Yeah.
And he said that stuff during this generation. When he's like, hey, we're reaching a certain point where we're going to get diminishing returns here.
Yep.
Yeah.
We got these guys over here that are trying to make our graphics as best as possible, and they can't even support the resolution they were designed for.
Right.
So how are we? Let's not forget. Let's go back down memory lane. The PlayStation 3, when it was first unveiled in 2005, was supposed to support and drive two 1080p displays.
Yep.
Plus a PSP.
Yep, and it couldn't do it. But hey, we almost had a batarang for a controller.
You know what? I would have been excited for that just because of something different.
Just imagine this. Imagine
I would have been excited when somebody come in so I could throw it at them.
Imagine if Nintendo said the Wii was an HD console, and then the Wii came out and it only supported 480p.
Oh, they would have got ripped.
Oh boy, they would have had a field day with that. Yeah.
But both of these consoles were claiming HD. And both of them only did HD for the most part through upscaling. Both of them. The majority of these games, Gears of War, Halo, all that shit.
That was upscaled.
God of War ended up being 540p upscaled to 1080i.
Yep, because they couldn't get it to run. Sprite, yeah, we do, especially if you want to run 4K now. There's companies like Square Enix and Ubisoft that tell you, like, if you run it at 4K, it will be locked. Certain games will be locked to 30. You have to run it at 1080 if you're going to get to 60.
So, and that's the other thing too. Like, why are we talking about 60 frames per second? 6 frames per second. Let me go all the way back.
All the way back.
This console right here did 60 frames per second. The Nintendo 64, Killer Instinct Gold was damn near a launch game. 60 frames per second. Yes, it was 2D. 60 frames per second. Straight up.
I think that's the caveat with a lot of this crap, to where it's like it has to be 60 frames per second, and it needs to be 4K, and it needs to do this, and it needs to be open world. And that's where the problem comes in.
That's why I like it when they say, look, the developer wants to set up this game. This is how the game's supposed to run. And the developer handles that from that point. I'm like, if it can run 60, it can. If it's not designed to do that, if the game is fun and I'm having a good time, who the hell cares?
Right. Like for me, my most looked for game that's coming out pretty soon is Ollie World. That is nothing on the scale of God of War, Grand Theft Auto. It's Ollie World, bro. Like that's, but it's a beautiful game, and that's something that you can appeal to. But I think a lot of people that talk on Twitter now, they came in that dude bro era to where it's all about Mountain Dew graphics and shooters.
And if it was really all about that, you get a PC and shut the hell up.
But you can't, because you don't want to put up with the troubleshooting.
Yeah, you want to see 60 frames per second. My Exhibit X is going to be F-Zero on GameCube. That's going to be your 60 frames per second right there. Yeah. And nobody wants that smoke because that game's too hard.
Realistic Shadow. It's cartoony Shadow.
First of all,
it's futuristic.
First of all, I have been begging Nintendo to bring F-Zero back. I have,
Nobody wants to buy
that game. I have played that game. No, I haven't. I have played that game. But they will bring it back just because me and my friends said they should bring it back. And that's the only reason why I'll ever buy a Switch if they bring back F-Zero.
And then
I love that game because F-Zero AX is on the same disc. It's just locked behind a code. And if you want to, you can play that in its full glory and get smoked by 30 people if you want to.
Yeah.
That's just wonderful. But yeah, it's you can't really go. So the goal is here. They want to go all the way to the end here and say, hey, the start of 9th generation means it's only Sony and Microsoft now.
Right.
Like, no, it's
like
not
how?
the case. It's not the case.
How? And if that's the case, then what is Switch to Wii U then? What do you call? You're gonna say that Switch is a mid-gen refresh of
That's
Wii
what
U?
some are saying. That's what some are saying.
How do you do that when
if that's the case, it's going backward, ain't it?
None of the Wii U hardware is in the Switch. Like it's completely different architecture. There's nothing the same about these two consoles. Games had to be rewritten and ported to Switch from Wii U. You can't take a Switch game and plug it into a Wii U. You can't take a Wii U game and plug it into a Switch.
Because most of the people, and I know I'm finna hurt some feelings when I say this, Xenoblade Chronicles X is not playing on the Switch.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not.
I don't care. I don't care how many times you cry on Twitter and Facebook about you want them to port this game to the Switch. It's
not happening.
It's not happening.
It
Too many resources. It needs it.
You don't want to play that game without the gamepad. You don't.
I tell anybody, if you want a great example, look at two games that I always play. You look at Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker or whatever it was called. Yep. That really needs the gamepad. Even though they made it to the Switch, it doesn't feel the same.
It's not the same.
It don't feel the same. And then you look at things like what was it, Deus Ex? Like that game in itself,
Revolution,
with the gamepad,
all your inventory, everything is there. Yeah,
I'm not going back to that. Like, why would I do that to myself?
Wonderful 101, same example. Yep. There's levels, and there's parts in that game that you need to look down at the gamepad, do what you got to do, and then you'll come out. But you can't do that on the Switch.
Yep. Yeah. You go inside of buildings, and it's a whole thing because the entire inside of the building is in the gamepad. Like you can't. That's nothing you could replicate. Like you could create like maybe a second window or something, but is not going to have the same impact. It's not like the volume changes and everything once you go in there. Like
everything. Nintendo create Wii U 2, just call it Switch 2, and allow me to take my Switch or Wii U 2 with me. That's all I need you to do.
I really think
I just want Miiverse back. I just want Miiverse back.
Just make a Wii U and your gamepad as a Switch. Like
that's it. That is it. You don't have to go like add some more power to kind of make it more efficient. But other than that,
I mean, I would say if you're gonna add power, don't add it into the Switch. Like put it in the console because the Switch. Do you need more than 720p on the go? Like,
I'm not talking about as far as the graphical standpoint. It's just when I play games like Hyrule Warriors and see how it just drops the way it does. I need that to be consistent, especially for games like that. So I mean, if your first party games are consistent, I'm cool. Third parties, I don't really care. But when your game's consistent, you can be at 720, you can be at 1080, you can be at 4K. I honestly don't care because even now, like everybody's like, "Oh, you're getting a brand new TV. What you getting OLED for? What?" Like it looks nice, but why? Why would I?
Yeah.
No.
So I was trying to look at some of those reasons. And just 4K is the reason that they're going
for the season.
And I'm like, but that's a Wikipedia reason. That's not a real reason.
I saw that. I'm saying, why are you using Wikipedia as a reason?
Yeah, like what exactly are they doing different? Because if you're telling me that Switch is just a refresh of Wii U, then what is PlayStation 5?
Yeah. Real quick, people. And this is for everybody that's listening to this. Please do not use Wikipedia as a source for anything. Anybody can go in there and change that.
You see, they're looking for donations right now. So
don't use Wikipedia as a source, please, because Wikipedia is not a good and relevant source because of the simple fact that anybody can go in and change anything to what they want it to be. So please don't use that when you're trying to debate or trying to prove your argument. It's not going to work.
At one point in time, Wikipedia said that there was a such thing as a Super Saiyan 5. So that should tell you everything you need to know from my Dragon Ball Z heads.
This is how bad it is. There are Nintendo haters on the Wikipedia page for Wii U that are constantly basically lowering the specs like every other week. And then either somebody from Wikipedia changes them back or whatever, and then somebody goes and lowers them again. Like every single time. for whatever reason, I don't know why there's some hater out there, but they keep doing that, and I keep looking at them like, why is this changing every time I go here? And like every time I go there, I look at it, somebody keeps changing it. It goes up and down, up and down, up and down. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, that's Wikipedia for you because they do that stuff and they don't have to source it.
Yeah, I'm not saying Wikipedia is a bad place for information. What I'm saying is when you're trying to do a debate, please do not use that as a source because that can be changed. And too many people go to Wikipedia and say, see, and you're like, yeah, but that's not exactly true if you go here.
Quora is also not a source, and just you Googling in the first result you see is also not a source.
But if you go to Bing,
oh my god.
Okay, it's about as good as going to Axe Jeeves back in the day.
God, back in the day, web crawler, we gonna find them. AOL search. Yeah,
well, I tell you, that man said Wikipedia. I'm like, really?
Yeah, chat over here trolling to my PlayStation 4.8. Yeah, man, you know, but if that's what you're gonna use, every PlayStation has just been another PlayStation.
Really?
If we're just gonna go there, if you're gonna like the amount of things that change from Wii U to Switch is substantial. Like if you try to say, hey, look, I'm going from PlayStation 4 to PlayStation 5, what's changing? You have haptic feedback now, which is also on Switch. And you have what you got graphics now? And you're like, oh well, we have SSDs. What does the SSD do? It gives me faster load times. How fast? A little bit slower than they were on the original cartridges back in the third generation.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, that's where we are? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
History repeats itself.
Okay.
I tell you.
I mean, it's great, it's convenient, but let's not kid ourselves here. We had cartridges that you put in a system, you press power, and you're on the game.
And you were there. Yep.
There are no loads. You didn't have to go make a sandwich.
Yeah.
You just put the cartridge in and you're playing. So you can't really say that that's all of a sudden a generational change.
It's been there.
It's a degradation from the third generation of consoles.
Yeah, that's true.
So I just can't. I can't with people when they do that, and I'm just like, so were you born yesterday or I don't know.
They were born tonight.
But even if that's the case, like I wasn't born during World War I, but I read up on World War I.
On it, yeah. Yeah, because I'm in PlayStation for the longest, and not to just harp on PlayStation because Xbox is kind of in the same boat. But when it comes down to PlayStation, it was what the one was really pushing, the 3D, along with the fact that you could play CDs. Yep. PS2 was really pushing that whole DVD, not just being the cheapest DVD player out there. And then, of course, continue that whole analog stick thing. When it came down to PS3, it was Blu-rays. And then they had that nice, if you got the 80 gigabyte one, you had like the SD card reader.
The 60 gig one.
60 gig. And then
80 gig was the second generation of it.
PS1 and PS2 back to back, and then they shut that all the way to hell down.
Yeah.
PS4, it was just, it was there with that touchpad and the light. That was like whatever. And then the PS5, and like I said, I own one. It rarely gets played, but I don't know, like PlayStation took over the namesake of gaming. I'll give them that. Like they are, to me,
they spent enough money.
They spent enough money and they got enough advertisement to where they took gamers that felt some type of shame of being a gamer and try to make it an adult thing. I'll give them that because Xbox helped, but I think PlayStation's carrying the torch with that. But that's about it.
I think like with the Sony thing, especially if you remember at the time, late 90s, early 2000s, that conglomerate was the truth.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Now though, I mean, they done sold a lot of their divisions. Sony Pictures, if it wasn't for Marvel, y'all can get mad at me for saying this if you loved Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. But if it wasn't for Marvel, Sony Pictures would probably be defunct and sold too.
But how much credit can we give PlayStation? Because I had this conversation with somebody else too. How much credit can we give PlayStation when majority of games that most of us remember were not PlayStation exclusive games per se?
We can't really give them that, but I think the
I hate to say that about Nintendo gamers.
Yeah, Super Nintendo same way.
hey, my game since the NES, blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, what Nintendo games do you like? And then they name a bunch of third-party games. Like,
exactly.
Because I will say this about Sony: if Sony did not try to keep up with the Joneses, aka Microsoft, and stay keeping up with Nintendo and Sega, they would be in a much better position.
Correct.
Because, like we said, 6th gen, they had mascots. They had Slide, they had Crash, they had Spyro, they had Jack and Daxter, they had Nathan Drake, and then for some reason, when Microsoft gets in, they feel like, oh, well, we can compete with them. You can't compete with Microsoft money.
You can't. And we saw Killzone.
There is only 2 companies I know that can compete with Microsoft money: Google and Apple.
Yes.
I think they were worried. I think they were worried because Microsoft was taking a chunk of their user base as far as the quote unquote older crowd. I guess if you want to call it that. That's more of a mentality than it is anything else. But,
exactly. Yeah.
But if they were stuck to their guns,
they would have been all
right. Square Enix wasn't going nowhere.
No.
Yeah.
Square. The only reason why Square dipped out because that's when they first started hemorrhaging all that money. That's when they started going to, okay, look, we got to put it on PC. We got to, hey, Microsoft, y'all gonna throw us a blank check too?
Look, if Sony was like, okay, they're really gonna do a whole nother console. We got a PlayStation 2 over here, and they're bringing out this new Xbox console. Okay, cool. That's nice. However, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do another Bushido Blade. We're gonna do another, well, they actually did end up funding a couple of the 18 games. So they did do the Primal Fury, I guess it was.
Yeah, Primal Fury, yeah.
So they ended up doing those, and then they ended up doing a couple other games. I think they actually funded the Sega games too. They did the Shinobi. I think they ended up doing
the one with the girl.
Yeah, they ended up doing that too. So that was cool. They ended up funding some of that stuff, but then they just kind of walked away. And they're like, "Yeah, Sony Santa Monica."
That's when they got arrogant. That's when they got arrogant because, like I said, at the time, you got to remember, at the time, Sony had all them divisions, dude. They were bringing in billions, but the problem was they were bringing in billions, but Microsoft was bringing in like hundreds of billions. It's a difference.
But they didn't see what they were eating, how they were eating though. Like, you had weird Japanese shit selling in America now. Katamari selling in America. What when you see stuff like that happening, you double down on that. Like, why wouldn't you?
Well,
and they're like, nope, we're just gonna God of War it. And I'm like, bro,
Nintendo and Sega would have doubled down on it. Nintendo and Sega would Sega doubled down on Ready to Rumble.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Sega doubled down. Sega doubled down so much they had Afro Man Afro Thunder just doing commercials.
Because think about it, he became like a sponsor for them.
Yeah,
it was Afro Thunder going inside the Dreamcast. I remember those commercials going inside the Dreamcast. Afro Thunder was in damn near every one of those commercials.
That was the legitimate version of that game too, though, because it came out for everything else, but the Dreamcast version was the version.
Yeah, Afro Thunder was in a barbershop.
Yes.
Afro Thunder was in the barbershop.
I love those.
Ain't got nothing to do with the game. Afro Thunder was in the barbershop.
If you want to see some good advertisement, go watch Dreamcast commercials. Those were those commercials got me to buy games. Like I love those commercials,
especially them Ready to Rumble ones.
Yeah.
Why y'all trolling me in the chat though? I got dude talking about Nintendo LinkedIn, and I got Juice Man Vaughn in the chat. I see you, bro. I see you out here. He one of the big chatters on Player Essence podcast. I see you in here.
Yep.
This SHC Grunt say most games can be beat within 10 hours or less. Yeah, I can agree with that, depending on how much you put it in or whatever. Sandstorm trolling, talking about real time ray tracing. There is no real time ray tracing. I don't. Do I need to make that statement again? Do I need to explain that? Like, everybody that follows me knows what this is.
They're not going to
water, man. It's ray tracing because of the water. Okay.
Because what you're not understanding is you're not pitching to the narrative they want to hear. Because you saying that no one does real time ray tracing is not going to fuel the fire that they have to throw at whoever it is they're competing against.
Don't listen to me. Listen to NVIDIA. They have an SDK. Nope. They put it out. They have
too nerdy. They're not just throwing it at me saying this is real ray tracing. This is what you can do. You need to simplify it.
It hurts so bad.
You need Brian Altano, Greg Miller, and
there you go.
And then people will believe it. Oh, and Adam Sessler.
And you know what's so sad about it? I was listening to a developer walkthrough, and one of the IGN guys was talking about it and talking about how the graphics so good or whatever, and he's like, yeah, look at the ray tracing on this floor, you can see the reflections, blah blah blah. And the developer is like, no, we don't have ray trace reflections on this floor. It's only in this other section over here. And it's just it's so bad.
It hurts. It hurts.
It's so bad. And I'm like, dude, like, if they have to point it out to you,
That's yeah.
If like you have to slow it down, if you have to do a side-by-side comparison, then there's no point.
There should be somebody in your office if you are like a game like IGN or GameSpot, Spot, or like, well, Game Trailers ain't around no more, but at the time, Game Trailers, you should have somebody in your office that is a technical person that can handle that stuff, because most of these dudes, let's be real, Jeff Keighley was not a technical person. No. None of the guys at IGN were that did all this stuff. That's why they would get upset when somebody would actually correct them. Yes. They would get upset. Like if you corrected Colin Moriarty, he would straight up get upset, try to have you blocked. I know because I did it once.
Colin was right. The Switch is gonna die. Right.
Yeah.
That aged well.
Right. I agree with Sprite too. And one of the comments says every time Sony wins a generation is always when the competition fumbles out the gate. Fifth, sixth, eighth. Yeah. I've said that plenty of times. When they are all healthy, it's neck and neck. But when it comes down to like somebody fumbling out the gate, I think Sony is the only company I've seen, and this may not be true, but only company I've seen to where even if they fumbled out the gate, people still went and supported it. Now that's the consumer. Like if you got a big following like that, kudos.
There ain't nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
I tell anybody the best consumer is the ones that is not in Twitter, and that's the casual crowd. Because I think if you look at the Wii U was a test to show you this is the true Nintendo heads. Like, here's 15 million individuals that really rock with Nintendo like that across the board. Facts. When you look at the Wii, where it's 100 million, if you look at the Wii U numbers, that means about 90 some odd million people were just casual. So that's just the reality of it. You're probably going to get 15 to 20 million real games to almost curious gamers. But the casual crowd runs the marketing as far as the sales go.
I want to say something that's going to be really controversial. Nintendo could have done 2 or 3 Wii U's and been fine, because they made so much money off Amiibo and Mario Kart, profit off games in general, because their games were selling really well.
All they had to do
13 million.
All they had to do was sell one console and one game, and they had a profit.
That's it.
That was
it. Profit.
That's all they had to do. Like everybody else was selling at a loss, not them.
Because everybody else expected them to do, 20, 30, 40, 50 million or whatever is considered as a failure. Like, dude, they still profited though. Meanwhile, we got consoles that sold 80 million and they 8 billion in the red. So I don't know what else you want me to tell you other than that. And I got people really arguing with me because they feel that somebody's a market leader because they have more market cap. And I'm like, you can have more market cap. That just means people are investing in you.
Yeah.
That don't mean you still don't have to pay bills.
And that don't
and
mean
what do you have left after you pay all your bills? It's
don't
not
mean you
more than 10 billion in cash. Yeah. It's not. So
if we keeping it a buck, the Xbox game division has been in shambles for years.
Years. They've never been in the green.
That's why when people were getting mad about the whole Game Pass initially and getting mad about them putting games on PC, I'm like, y'all need to shut up. If you're a fan, he's trying to save the game division, because Shadow, me and Satella will cut a division in a heartbeat.
Oh, real quick. He's been wanting to kill it.
He's notorious for it.
I think he hates this acquisition right now, because what's about to happen is he's going to love and hate it at the same time, because he gets his xCloud fix, because more people are going to want Game Pass because they have these new titles now, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same point in time, it means that they can't tell Xbox no when they want to make another console again for 10th generation. They can't tell them no.
Because between shares and everything else that went into this acquisition, it was pretty big.
They can't tell them no. It's the Xbox division's idea. They got a big dub out of this, so they can't really tell them no on that note. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove. We kind of know what's happening there. It's just there's no way to say the console is in 9th generation. It started the generation, and I don't know why people keep denying it. So, Jay, I know you gotta get out of here a little bit. I probably need to go ahead and cut this short anyway, but. I just wanted to explain that. If you look, there was that whole little weird hanging off at the end there. At the end of a generation, you had PlayStation 4 Pro and Switch just kind of sitting there. And while I can say that yes, PlayStation 4 Pro did launch just a little bit before Switch did, PlayStation 4 Pro was a PlayStation 4. Same firmware, same architecture, played the same games.
It's in the title.
Wasn't even playing in 4K. We got checkerboard rendering all over the fucking place. And then you have Switch, which is a console that does something completely different that Wii U could not do. And also, there was a bunch of things that Switch couldn't do that Wii U could do.
Wii U can do. Yep.
So they're different systems, and if they're different systems, maybe there's a generation change happening. I don't know what else to tell people, but and they want to talk about the tech. Then I'm like, well, the CPU and Switch is kind of fucking strong. It's a little bit better than the one
generation of 4K. This is generation of 4K.
Once the Switch Pro drops, it's with 16K and 385 frames per second. Y'all see the true power.
There you go.
When you turn your Switch on, it immediately melts. You'll know.
It's just bad, man. I guess before you go, Jay, we give our little. I guess it could be part of the outro, but I always try to ask what games you gaming before we depart.
So EX Fighting Layer, Another Dash.
Okay.
Pick that one up, and I'm gonna be probably gonna stream that one day, either tomorrow or Friday. I'm probably gonna stream that. I'm trying to practice right now because I suck, and so before I jump in the arcade, because I jumped in the arcade, did not know what the hell I was doing, and thoroughly got my ass worked. But I am trying it out. It's actually pretty fun. I haven't played the Fighting Layer series, but it's not too bad, not too shabby. So I'm just learning my way through it. So that's probably one of the ones I'm playing, and I'm probably gonna put in some time on Marvel Ultimate Alliance, because I never played with Moon Knight and Punisher. So I'm gonna probably do some gameplay with them, try to level them up a little bit. Especially since we got that Moon Knight trailer. Check out me and Sandstorm's reaction vid yesterday. Check that out. Because that does drop on Disney Plus March 30th.
Okay.
Plug. So Disney Plus hire me. But yeah.
You said Disney Plus hire me?
They might as well. I mean, him and Vicky, they doing all these reviews, man.
Yeah.
They are. They're going hard right now.
But yeah, that's probably about it. And podcast Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yes, shameless plug. It's there. I mean, just look above his head. You see it?
Yes,
right
yes. There.
Beautiful.
And when you go there and watch it, like the damn video, man.
Video. It's hard to do. It's hard. It's hard.
Just I don't care if you like mine. You could dislike mine. It's great. I don't give a shit, because I had a dude. He was in the chat just now, just spamming the chat. Great.
Yeah, I saw that earlier.
That's interactivity to me. I'll take it. I don't care. It's just one of those things, man.
I don't think some people don't understand how the metrics work. So if you keep spamming, it's probably going to make it look real good. So if you really hate,
great.
If you hate the person, you probably don't want to do that.
Right.
Just saying.
I'll take any interactivity. What you got, Jack? What games you been gaming?
For the time that I've had, because I'm in the process of finally, hopefully within the next 2 or 3 weeks, finally closing on this damn house. So this market has been a pain in my ass. So that's why I've kind of been hiatus, right? Like for a minute, because going back and forth between that and then also starting a new position at work. But just busy with that. But the games I have been able to jump on is Evil Genius 2.
Okay.
I thoroughly enjoyed the game, but this is a game that I find an issue with a lot of like turn-based or even RTS games. In a way, the tutorials are awful. Like they try their best to give you the basics, but then you find yourself right on YouTube just to answer the questions that you're like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do here, or how do I transition here? So I'm on YouTube with that game. I tried to jump back into Mass Effect, but I have when I started up, I realized how long it would take me to get everything started, and I'm like, hell no. Like I'm just gonna turn it off, and then I always stick with my sports as far as like 2K22.
Those are remakes or the OGs?
The remakes. Because I turned it on and I'm like, okay, cool. I remember this, and then I'm like, damn, okay. Let me let me get back into it. Exactly. So I tried that, and then also with the PSN games, Persona 5 Strikers dropped on there, and so I downloaded that. Okay. I did not know that this game was just as damn talkative as as Persona 5, and I think in an hour I did 2 fights. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, I'm about right. Hurry the hell.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And I was just like, skip. Like
RPG, the fighting game.
Oh my gosh! But other than that, that's all I've been playing. And whenever I do have some downtime, I'll try to go back and watch the videos that you guys did that I missed. And then for whatever reason, I kind of stumbled up on Dragon Ball Z Abridged again after so many years. But other than that, that's all I've been doing.
Okay. The most recent thing, believe it or not, I've been watching Jessica Jones.
Really?
For whatever reason, I watched Luke Cage, and I never went back to watching the rest of Jessica Jones. I just watched the first season. So after she killed old dude, I never watched back. I never watched the remaining 2 seasons. So I'm watching those now, and it's kind of weird knowing what's going to happen. So I'm kind of in a weird holding pattern watching the rest of that right now. It's kind of strange in retrospect after seeing Luke Cage and everything else. But other than that, I've been playing.
Back. Both of them will be coming back.
Oh, they're coming back. So are they going to do another Defenders or
no Heroes Fire?
Okay,
they're just gonna go and do Heroes Fire, which is what they should have did the first time, but that's neither here nor there.
Other than that, as far as gaming goes, I've been playing random games on Nintendo 64 online. I successfully. I can't get like your boy Jay over here.
Jay done got all the 64 controllers.
Yeah, I had the bootleg. You see the cord hanging out over here.
No cord. No cord. All USB, baby. All USB.
had to run some modifications there. Had to use some third party equipment to make that stuff work.
Hey.
But I'm running through a couple of those N64 games, some GameCube games. Believe it or not, I'm trying to record those for footage for the channel and whatnot. And obviously that means that I played the backwards compatibility on Series X because I'm loving Dead or Alive 4 all over again. And this little game here I'm going to start in just a little bit. So y'all already know
I need to get
what's about to happen. So I need to go through that.
I want to get that, but Sifu was right around the corner.
Yeah. Oh man, I got to solidify these Game of the Year talks. And so at this point, I probably won't be done until February. So it's between that
because March will be hell. March,
yeah, I gotta finish Halo, and I gotta finish Halo, and I gotta go through Ratchet. So
I went through Ratchet, so I'm good on that.
Yeah, I got to get through that, and I don't think I'm gonna make it in time, but I want to go back and play Kena Bridge of Spirits. That's what's on my list. Other than that, if you see me, I'm playing the free version of Captain Toad because I refuse to buy that on anything other than Wii U. But I'm noticing the differences and the things that we talked about earlier. Yeah, they are apparent. You should play it on Wii U.
Yeah, you should.
and other than that, Streets of Rage 4, man, game of the year last year, game of the fucking year. If you guys have not played Streets of Rage 4,
I don't know what you're waiting on.
I don't care what system you buy it for.
Just buy it.
I just happen to be playing it on Switch. Goddamn, that's a good game.
You think Shredder's Revenge gonna beat it out?
Hell yeah!
I hope so.
Hell yeah!
Really? I want it.
Really?
I want it to be better so bad. Like I want it to be better because these guys are so good at making these beat 'em ups. They're wonderful.
Yeah. So I kind of want them to do Simpsons. Hell, after they get through with this, I kind of want them to
do the Simpsons too. Just go ahead and make it all a thing. Because
I need arcade sticks though. Like the one arcade stick with the Switch is cool, the Hori one, but I just need then I think 8-Bit Do has one that's wireless.
They got a wireless one.
What is that? What I have? The Hayabusa? Is that what I have? Or I have a Mad Cat.
I used to have the Hayabusa one.
Did you just say you had a Mad Cat? Did you just say you had a Mad Cat?
But it's a fight stick though. That's
Did you just say you had a Mad Cat?
That's different.
That's different. That is
not a gamepad. It was a fight stick.
The Mad Cats are good.
Man, I'm
about to have
PTSD, man. I'm about to have PTSD.
Hey,
talk about Mad Cats.
That's one pass I'll give Mad Cats. Them fight sticks are
the fight sticks were good.
Everything
else though, everything else though
is a dud.
Other than that though, I will say this, and I think this is everybody secretly inside. I ain't playing shit on Steam, bro. You go on there, you're like, this backlog is crazy, and every time I log into Steam, they're like, everything's on sale, and I'm like, I'm not buying nothing else. I have 200 games over here. I'm not buying nothing else.
That's what PlayStation does. Because I think for like the third week in a row, they're like, 75% off. I'm like, I'm good. Because
fine. Games ain't selling. They're trying to help.
They're throwing them out there. They're just like, buy something, please. And I'm like,
There's games on everybody's shop that's like 90% off. That don't make a bit of sense.
It hurts because, dude, I paid the full 60 for Ghost of Tsushima. It hurts. It hurts so bad in the face.
25.
Yeah, it hurts so bad. You buy these games new, and it hurts me so bad because I'm like, why did I do this? Because I knew it was gonna take me a while to get around to it and play it. And so I get on my backlog and I play it. Then I beat the game. Then I go on PSN and it's like, this is a dub now. And I'm like, bro, what is happening right now? It hurts. So
I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson with Mortal Kombat 9.
What did you say?
I learned my lesson with Mortal Kombat 9 when I bought it day one for PS. And the next thing you know, it was like $3
now.
See, that's the thing. Even with games, the way I know they're gonna drop, mine is Nintendo. But the way I know they're gonna drop, if it's a game that I really, really, really know I'm gonna like, I'll go get it day one. Like Sifu, I plan on getting that day one full price, even though I know it's gonna drop in a matter of like 3 weeks.
That game looks like fun. It looks like a lot of fun.
It does. And I was surprised we couldn't get the demo because apparently only certain people were able to get it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's on certain people, which did make a bit. I hate when they do that. I'm gonna have to bring it up Sunday too. I hate because a lot of other companies are doing this with these demos. Because Tales of Arise
releases.
Tales of Arise only put the demo on PS5. Forget about PC, PS4, and Xbox. Just only on PS. That didn't make a bit of sense.
It's so stupid.
Yeah, so it's a demo.
So I'm wondering, do you think these first party developers are paying for that, or like?
Yeah, of course.
That's weird.
Bandai had to pay for that. Bandai had to pay for that.
That's so strange. Like what?
That's stupid.
Like pay for exclusive DLC or something.
Yeah,
like,
but don't
pay for a demo.
For a demo, because that hurts. To me, that hurts you. That hurts bringing people in. Because some people ain't going. Some people, and I don't have kids, but I know some people like my cousins that have families. They're like, nah. I ain't finna buy everything. If they got a demo, they'll play it first. I'll make sure they like it.
And that's where Game Pass comes in.
Yeah.
Clutch.
Comes in the clutch. Bro. Yeah.
Because my son was like, he wanted that Ben 10 game. Came up on Game Pass. He's like, nah, Dad, I don't really like this. Delete.
Yeah.
We up out of here.
I call Game Pass my unofficial rental system.
Oh my God.
It just saved me a lot. Them HBO Max.
Yeah.
Is there anything else I missed? We talked about the Microsoft thing. And obviously Bobby Kotick he's gone. He's done as soon as there was something else that happened like last week, and I can't remember what it was. I wanted to try to cover it a little bit, but I missed out on that. Y'all might have talked about it Sunday. I'm not sure if I missed that or not. But the big news was obviously the Microsoft buyout. This week, so that's just hella strange. I don't know what's going to happen with that as far as like the employees, because I don't know if y'all following that, but there was a big move and a big push for one of the gaming's first unions to be formed within Activision. And if Microsoft is going to complete this buyout, you can kiss that union goodbye. That's not happening.
But they ain't going to have the same issues that they had at Activision.
True.
That's the difference. It would be different if they were going to have the same issues, then that'd be an issue. But they're not going to have the same issues at Microsoft that they had at Activision. Activision, that was just negligence of the highest order.
Yeah, that is another topic I want to bring up though. At some point, is that so I talk about this all the time because the whole quote unquote conversation about standards. There's no ratified standards for the gaming industry like that, other than ESRB, and there's one of the developers support organizations or whatever. That's like one of the only couple of ratified standards for the gaming industry. at all, because all they do otherwise is just adopt other stuff from other technologies and then say, yeah, we're gonna adhere to that standard. They don't really have their own,
right?
And likewise, there's no unions really. So there's no Screen Actors Guild for developers. There's no Screen Actors Guild for designers or producers or whatever. They don't really have any protection, and there's no way for them to copyright their work or trademark their work, independent of the first party or third party publisher. That basically is like this: you can be a music artist, go to a publisher, and you still have a copyright over your brand and your name, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a developer and you pitch an idea to a studio, once they become the publisher, they own everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really have a say in anything. You're just a developer. You might get your name on the credits. You might not in the situation of, that happened with Metroid Dread and there's a bunch of times this happened for like Assassin's Creed games and stuff like that, because they have thousands of people working on the game at a time. And you don't really have a way to say, hey, look, my work is being represented and I'm putting my name on it and it's mine. This little piece that I did is mine. I'm copywriting this because if anybody ever wants this and I want to sell this to somebody third party later on, this is my little piece that I was good at and I was able to do this. They can't, because it's under the license of that entire game that was published by somebody else who didn't even know that was there. But they got a team of lawyers, so if anything from that code leaves, they can sue that person.
All right.
And I really think that needs to change, because there's a lot of smart people that build these games, and a lot of the problems that they solve, they could use that outside of that one game that they got published. Mm-hmm. So just imagine Factor 5 not being able to take their talents to any other games. Like, right. if Nintendo wasn't cool with that and they wanted to lock down all their tech, like that's what's happening in other third-party studios right now, and it's really gross. So I'm hoping that there's some kind of movement, amongst, and I hate to take it to a serious level, but I'm just hoping there's some type of movement that happens amongst either developers and maybe some of these project managers that are able to protect these guys and say, hey, look, once you leave outside of here, we can kind of help you with the tech that you've invented, or the code that you produce or whatever, to be able to go somewhere else and say, hey, look, you copyrighted just this little piece of code and you can take this outside of here without getting in trouble.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that was the only news thing that I wanted to take out of that, because I don't think anybody really touched on that. That's kind of more, I don't know if that's political or not, but it's gaming related to me. But
no, it's gaming related. It's gaming related, because it wouldn't have came about if it hadn't been for Activision. So
yeah,
because nobody else is really, well, I take it back. Ubisoft had that issue, but Yves nipped that in the bud immediately.
Yeah,
he fired everybody.
They tried though. They were protesting hard. They were trying.
But once that was saying, like, Yves handled it correctly. Mm-hmm. He did his investigation. They were mad that he was investigating, but he had to. Did his investigation, fired everybody in the HR department.
Yep.
Right. Yep.
So G-Win asked about the Kirby trailer, and I don't understand why there's a bunch of fake tech heads out here talking about how good this trailer looks. I mean, it looks great, but all they did was take from what third parties and other first party platforms do. They just say, hey, look, let's take all the color away and make it look realistic, and it looks realistic. I don't know. Nintendo could always do that. They just choose not to. So it's just one of those things where, this looks so amazing, and it's all brown, bro. Of course it's gonna look amazing. Like, it's gonna look realistic. There's like one color. What do you want me to do? Like, that's not. I'm gonna say this again. The least amount of color there is on screen, the less amount of processing is being done. Because you have colored pixels on screen. The more colored pixels you have on screen, the more work you have to do. The less amount of colored pixels you have on screen, the less amount of work you have to do. People don't understand that, and they just want to look with their eyes, and they're like, well, it looks realistic to me. And I'm like, yeah, it looks realistic, but it's damn near all gray. So, is it really doing more work or is it not? Because it looks like a lot of those values are copied and pasted over and over again, and they're already existing around. So it's one of those things where I look at certain things and I know what that is, and then other people are like, "Well, I think it's the best thing ever. It looks so great," and I'm like, "Okay, cool, that's fine." I saw that like a couple generations ago, but okay. It's just weird to me. I think the game looks great for a lot more different reasons than other people do. They looked at that one brown area, and I'm like, I'm looking at all the things. I'm looking at a Kirby is going to a town, like just little shit like that. And I'm like, this is kind of interesting. I don't really remember seeing all this stuff in any other game. So, and I'm just hoping that it has that surprising factor of, hey, we're just as hard as Kirby's Adventure on NES. Y'all remember that? Remember how it kicked your ass? Like, I wonder if they go back to that.
They can't make it that hard.
I wish they would.
I need them to do that for at least a separate spinoff or whatever for Kirby. Because Kirby, while it does get a lot of praise for a great game, that has to be the easiest.
It's super easy unless you want to collect everything. Like the only way it's hard is if you want to collect everything. Then it gets a little difficult, but otherwise you can just run straight through it.
Gamers nowadays ain't trying to hear that, man. They complain about Fast Remix, but claiming they want F-Zero.
But Fast Remix was on Switch, so that's the problem.
But they claim they want F-Zero.
They don't want F-Zero.
Fast Remix, if you complaining about Fast Remix but saying you want F-Zero, you did not play F-Zero.
I love Fast Remix, but my eyes cannot handle Fast Remix, bro.
I think a lot of these dudes at this point, I don't think they could take Burnout 2 or 3 at this point again, because they're so used to playing the game, they just fail over and over again and jump back to where they were.
And jump right back in.
Those two games, they're like, you make one mistake, bro, you doing that whole race over. And then I don't think people were ready for that. So
Metroid Dread exposed a lot of people.
Yes,
for sure.
Including game developers.
Whole ass developers, designers out here like, this is bad game design. Like, okay.
Well, I mean, it goes to show you how things changed over time. Because I mean, we got the whole. Because if you really think about it, I never understood the love for Shenmue on Dreamcast until I realized that it was introducing like these quick time events and everything else, and now that's a standard to where. The quick time events, I don't understand them sometimes. It's like, why did you make me do this? It's like you could have just did that cutscene and just let me move on to the game.
It was back then. It was a way to be able to show you a cinematic and make it interactive without you having to sit there and watch it. I think that was more the original intent,
right? And plus, at the time, nobody did a story like that.
Yes, right. And Shenmue was supposed to be a kung fu movie. Basically, you're playing a kung fu movie, and it's like you get to fight and you learn these different styles, and it was just a different thing for the time. And you're talking about what is essentially an open world game in a time where games like that were not possible. So, I really appreciated it for the time for what it was. It's just. Yeah, now that it's probably painful to go back to.
Everybody. It was hard for me because when I didn't get a chance to play it when the Dreamcast was out. So when I tried to go back to it when Shenmue 3 was coming out, I was like, nah, I can't do this. It was kind of difficult.
Shenmue 1 on Dreamcast that's kind of painful. It's amazing, but it's painful because you're switching discs.
I would not play that on anything but the Dreamcast though.
Yeah.
If you play that thing on Xbox because I think they do have one on. They think they do have it on PlayStation as well, 1 and 2.
I think so.
I would not play it on anything but probably Dreamcast or PC, if anything.
Yeah, Dreamcast was the way to go. It was loud. It made Dreamcast real loud, but it
got me in trouble a lot.
Yeah, but it was great though. I had a lot of fun playing it. So, but yeah, it's just a lot of different techniques in the past of how they develop games that going forward. I mean, we kind of see the same things happening, and what frustrates me is we have the technology to move well beyond that, and we don't. And they're not. You probably saw my complaints about Horizon. And other games, it just doesn't make any sense to me. How do you make an open world game with invisible walls? But it's just
to me, I don't think like Forbidden West is real colorful. I don't think this game is going to be better than the first one.
I hope you're wrong so bad. I really do.
Man. It's going to be better than the first one because it's not releasing near Breath of the Wild.
No. That aside, because that's what killed that first one. But I'll tell anybody, and I think Jay, you went through the same thing. I know a couple people. I made the mistake of playing Breath of the Wild
first.
Yep.
Because there were so many things that you could do that I went to that game trying to do, and I'm like, hold on, what the hell?
Yep.
You just couldn't pull it off, and people don't understand the immersion that gets thrown off. It's the same thing that I explained with the VR crowd when I talked to them on Twitter. It's like if you play PSVR and that's the first thing you touch, cool, fantastic. Touch a Quest, and you are not going back to the PSVR. I have a cousin; she has a PSVR. She is going out of her way to go get a Quest 2 because of the things you can't do. Yep. And it's awesome. Like Quest 2, while yes, you have the index and all that stuff, that's fantastic. It's the go-to most accessible VR headset that's wireless. And I think that's the thing that people miss is the wireless aspect of it. Yes, it doesn't look as great as PC VR, but the cool thing about it too, you can have it wirelessly if you got a Wi-Fi 6 router and have your PC VR games on your Quest 2. So it's just
why is PSVR 2 still requiring a USB cable? I don't at this point. You've got a Nintendo Switch that people are strapping to their heads at this point. And y'all can't figure this out.
No, Sony's smart. Sony's very smart. Why would I create something that's wireless when I can give you another reason about this PS5?
Touche. I get that. make all the processing a requirement on PS5. So because if you want the PSVR, obviously you're going to need a PS5 to do it. So and that's a brand that you're spending to.
They're not stupid. So I mean, because even though I plan on getting one just to see what it's like. The one worry that I put in my video when I did it, when they first announced it, was the fact that they were just going to piggyback off of these mainline games, that we may not get actual VR made games. They were just going to have VR pieces in these games that already exist. And
like phone versions of games.
Horizon was the first thing they showed.
And it looks like Pokemon Snap. Like I was sitting there looking, I was like, bro, this is Pokemon Snap in the Horizon universe. What are we doing?
That's all that, and that's what they're gonna do. But to what we spoke about earlier, PlayStation has such a high and mighty name. People go out their way to add games there. But the problem is they have the competition of what's now MetaQuest, MetaQuest 2, because even Index can't get like the games that they get over here, because Medal of Honor just got an exclusive game on Quest. Resident Evil 4 is killing on Quest right now.
Yeah.
So
RE4 is killing it everywhere.
Right. Really, and then Saints and Sinners, even though that's damn near everywhere, is selling best on Quest 2.
Yeah.
So graphics aside, people love the fact that I can pull out my Quest 2 anywhere and play it. As long as I got light, it's good.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and close it up. I got one question in the chat, which is kind of weird. Well, they're going back and forth on the whole Factor 5 thing. Factor 5 still exists in California only. The German company is defunct. And
I thought they got merged with something though.
I think they're making phone games now, specifically for the California company that's left. Okay. I don't know what their current project is, but the last thing I looked at when I was looking them up was they were making a phone game. Not sure whether the mighty have fallen, but they're kind of not making anything anymore, and it would be wonderful for them to come back to Nintendo,
right?
Because they have a wealth of knowledge. I'm pretty sure they could do the showpiece type of technology demos that Nintendo needed then at the time. But they left. Then the guys that did the Conduit kind of took their place after they left. So, and I don't know what they're doing anymore. I think the last thing they made was a Ninja Turtle game, where they helped make a Ninja Turtle game, and that was it. High Voltage. Wow. So
they had a game, but it got canceled. Grinder.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the Grinder. Yeah, that was supposed to be pretty nice, because that was supposed to be their zombie game and have a whole bunch of different characters on screen.
It's supposed to be like Hunter.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be like the spiritual successor to the Hunter series.
Hunter the Reckoning. Yeah. So, but that's going to be it for this ShadowCast. I guess we kind of halfway define console. I just wanted to get to at least to the 8.5 gen here. So we got that out of the way. I didn't really touch on the whole 5200 as much like I should have, because that's the big excuse that a lot of people use. That just say, hey, well, 52 was marketed as a successor, and I'm like, I can only find one magazine that even touched on that, and there's no official statement from Atari saying that's a successor to the 2600. They did say it for the 7800, but the 5200 was more like a companion thing. So I don't know what.
But that's key too when you think about it, because we didn't have social media then. So depending on what magazines you subscribe to, your viewpoint could be totally different, because somebody could have skewed the point. You know what I'm saying? We have yellow journalism that people keep forgetting. Like, people like to lie to get the buzz going for their magazine. So it just all depends.
I think that's where ultimately that's where the whole generation thing has been skewed anyway. It's a whole bunch of people that consume media from mainstream gaming press and whatever vocal YouTubers, and that's where they get it from. And the vocal YouTubers, they just look at Wikipedia because they don't know. So they just go and they look here, and nobody ever thought about the entire process of how they got to that conclusion. So I'm looking at Nintendo consoles 4 to 6 years for every single generation, and now you're going to tell me, oh no, the Wii U was supposed to be 8 for some magical reason, and they failed, so the Switch is a continuation of that. Like, no. No,
that's not how it works.
It's not
at
how
all.
It works, so.
At all.
But other than that, I don't really have anything. If you guys have anything, you can shout out your channels real quick, and if you have anything else other than what you're gaming on, y'all can go ahead and shout that out. And then
mine can be real quick. Whenever I get into this damn house, my channel will rev back up. I'll be on Sunday's episode for the Winging It podcast now that I've gotten some downtime for sure. And then to answer Sandstorm's question, or to his request for Ace Combat, if motion sickness has anything to do with anything, I will not be touching no Ace Combat in VR, because there's a game now called Warplanes on Quest 2. Fantastic dogfighter. But when I tell you, no matter how much I raise that comfort level, if I don't have a fan in front of me, trust me, food's going everywhere. So that's just not gonna happen. But yeah, that's about it for me.
Warplanes, writing it down. All right, good. Jay, what you got going on? I ain't mean to stretch out your time. I know you wanted to get out here early.
It's all good. Wing the Podcast Sunday, 7 p.m. Y'all come by. Chat's gonna be open. We're on our road to 100, so stop by. We'll have something
on the road to Viridian City.
Oh, most definitely. Appreciate everybody. Thank y'all for coming out. We got enough people viewing right now. I appreciate everybody in the chat. I see all your comments talking about GameCube, Rose Scargin, and I appreciate y'all giving all the compliments about the show. And we'll see you guys next time. I'm going to try to make this a little bit more regular, so hopefully we can keep this going Wednesdays. Aiming for a 7 o'clock time frame, depending on what happens. ShadowCast or ShadowCast. So look for this between 7 EST or 8 EST, depending. So, and we'll go from there. And my overseas guys, we'll try to come up with something for you guys later on. We got to come up with something for these guys to watch, because otherwise they're trying to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning their time to watch some guys ramble about video games, and that's probably not a go. I got to find something that's a little bit more digestible for them, so I'll try to come up with that. But other than that, I don't have anything other than, do you play games to have fun or to impress other people? And we're out.
See you.
Peace.
Yep. And we'll end this podcast at some point. I don't know. ShadowCast just end whenever the fuck they want. So this is what we do. So